Three organizations that are benefiting from tonight, so thank you all incredibly. Concerns of Police Survivors. Can I get a show of hands? Who's heard of Concerns of Police Survivors before? Wow, we have a lot of work to do over there, huh? So Concerns of Police Survivors, or COPS, was established in 1984. They have 54 chapters across all 50 states. They rebuild the shattered lives of families of fallen police officers. They now service more than 52,000 families. They are one of the three organizations that runs National Police Week. I'm sure many of you have heard of National Police Week. We have gone to many of their conferences. We've been at National Police Week with them. We've interviewed, at this point, hundreds of survivors of fallen officers. These guys are one of the top, they do charity ratings to make sure that people give, that organizations use your money wisely. And they are one of, I believe, the top 10 charities in the nation for money that goes back to the surviving families. We also have one of the other organizations, Behind the Uniforms. So Behind the Uniforms is a series that launched a few years ago. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that later, but there's a whiskey wall in Connecticut, and at that whiskey wall, active and retired emergency responders and veterans come to the whiskey wall. They bring a bottle of whiskey. We sit, and on camera, we share a cocktail, and they tell you a story about a good day on the job and a lousy day on the job. And then their name goes on that bottle, and that bottle goes on the wall. So that wall at this point, it is hundreds and hundreds of stories. And I have a lot of whiskey in my office, which is pretty cool. So anyone in here who's active or retired, emergency responder or veteran, you have a seat at that whiskey wall and a sip of whiskey whenever you want to come out to Connecticut. So you're probably wondering why this dude who's not a cop is the national spokesman for law enforcement today, not the cop who owns it. It's because I'm better looking, for one. No, it's actually because I can run my mouth and no agency could fire me. And that's why Robert asked me to step up and try and be a voice for those who don't have a voice. Stephen, can you do me a solid and stand up for a second, brother? You, yeah, get up. Come here for a second. Stephen is the gentleman from Sunderland Springs who ended the shooter. 26 people died, 20 more were wounded, and this patriot right here was the man who ended the threat. Stephen. I was blessed and honored to sit down with this patriot for well over an hour yesterday. We're going to be sharing his story, one of many, on law enforcement today in the coming weeks. What's so special about Stephen is that he is like many of you who are in law enforcement. When you take off that uniform, right, nobody recognizes you necessarily if you're not in your community. They don't recognize you as being a warrior. But Stephen has that warrior mindset. He has that warrior mentality. So many of us do, and it's about damn time that we step up as patriotic Americans and start honoring the warriors among us, whether they're in law enforcement, whether they're firefighters, whether they are veterans, whether they are just men and women who love our country. So again, give it up for Stephen. Thank you, brother. Now, Mitch stressed to me again before I started talking, he said, listen, I know that all the technology failed and your videos and everything are gone, but don't fall back on getting political. And I was really confused because like I know I'm from Connecticut, but I felt like Texas was my safe space. I thought I could come here, and so he said to avoid that, but I will tell you this. I'm a conservative millennial in the People's Republic of Connecticut. I'm sort of a unicorn out there. And when I come out here, it is a different world. The more we travel with law enforcement today, the better feel you get for who Americans really are, right? You turn on the media, and the media says, you all hate each other, right? Like you're conservative, you're liberal, you're black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, you're Hispanic, you're not. We all hate each other. Social media has created this environment where we think that we hate each other. But it's moments like this where we all sit down and we drink beer and we shake hands and we realize that we're no different just because of who we vote for, who we love, who we hang out with, who we drink with. We got to get back to that. I think it's time that we start putting all of our own running of the mouths aside. Shut off Facebook. I mean, don't shut it off too much because we get a lot of eyeballs on law enforcement today through Facebook, but take some time to hang out with your neighbor over a beer and a campfire and remember who we are again. I want to share with you a little story. So I was in Tucson, Arizona a few weeks ago, and I was with Tucson PD. They brought me up with the aerial division. Got the headset on so we get to listen to everything, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're flying over the city, and there's lightning all around. Now, if anyone's ever been to Tucson, you probably know this better than I did, but Tucson's like a bowl, I guess, so there could be a lightning storm all around, and that lightning's not going to touch you because of the geography of the land. And so we get a call in, and they said, we've got a guy on camera, and he's at a Lexus dealership, and he's just walking around, and he's looking at all the cars. We got him on surveillance. So they're like, do you have any patrol cars on the way? They said, negative, we have nobody available. We said, we're going. So I'm all excited, right? Like we're on this secret mission. So we're flying over there, and he's looking around, the two guys who are running the helicopter, and he said, Kyle, look over there on the left. I got him. I said, I don't see him. He goes, Kyle, it's time. We're going to light him up. I said, we're going to shoot him? He said, no, like we have a big ass light. We're gonna put that 30 million candle watt light on him. I was a little bit disappointed about that. So they hit him with the light, and the guy looks up and he shakes his head and he just keeps going, car to car. So about 5 minutes later, 7 cars roll out, and we could hear the whole thing on the headset. That's like the coolest thing. I'm like a 4-year-old kid again watching WWE. So they stopped the guy and they said, walk towards us. What do you think you're doing? And he goes, I'm car shopping. They said, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, you guys ever try and go to a car dealership just to look at cars in the middle of the day? Those salespeople suck. And there's just silence, like nobody knows what to do at this point. So they're like, well, if you're just car shopping, when they hit you with that light, why didn't you run? He goes, I wasn't doing anything right. Did I break the law? Am I doing anything illegal? And they're all looking at each other like, well, no, guess you're not. He's like, man, I remember when I could just car shop in the middle of the night and it was okay. We have a shift that's happening in America right now. There's the shift where everybody's on edge. Law enforcement's on edge. Everybody's on edge. We have a war on law enforcement. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care that the media tells you that there's not. We have blatant attacks happening every single, guys, put on the news. Put on the news, even though I just told you to shut it off, and all you have to do is look. I mean, look at what's happening in New York City. My God, there is no respect. And that starts with the top down. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, respect for law enforcement is set by their example. And when they're not setting that example in a positive way, we are all failing. We're all failing. So my background, I worked in TV for about 10 years. I was a producer of news and special projects. I was working about 80 hours a week, and it was a great pickup line when I was in my 20s. Girls would be like, I'm a teacher, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a producer for NBC, and I can take you out to dinner on food stamps because I actually made no money. But it wasn't everything that it was cracked up to be on paper. And we went through training on how to make cops look bad. They taught us how to take 7-second clips from body cam or dash cam footage, manipulate the story around it to get ratings. They would never tell you that's what we were doing, but that's what we were doing. And having most of my family and friends who were in law enforcement, it made me sick. And finally, it got to the point where I had to get out. I got out, I started a marketing agency called the Silent Partner Marketing. Screwed up the first couple of years, also bartended, which is why I say tip your bartenders. I got you. Did that, started the company, started finally hiring people who were a lot smarter than I was, and then the company exploded. And so we had a point where things were going really well, and we made a pledge to donate $500,000 in services to tell the stories behind the uniforms. We did a video with the Manchester, Connecticut Police and Fire Departments. The video exploded. We got 3 million views in about 2 days. I got the Chiefs on Fox and Friends. Ainsley Earnhardt, who's one of my celebrity crushes, was interviewing them and said, what's the deal with this video? Who made this video? So they talked about our agency. Now you would think that that kind of national media exposure would be really good, right? Yeah, well, Antifa saw that clip. That was cool. So within about 15 minutes, we had hundreds of fake 1-star reviews on Facebook and on Google, and they vowed to put us out of business for supporting pigs and killers and Nazis. So we're pretty small at that point. My management team flipped out. They said, well, what are we going to do? I said, guys, there's only one thing we can do. They said, this will put us out of business. I said, we only have one choice. They said, we're going to kill the campaign. I said, screw that. We're going to double the donation. They could all kiss our American asses. So we doubled the donation to $1 million in services, and then I instructed my staff to go respond to those negative, fake 1-star reviews by trolling them, taking screenshots, putting them up on Facebook. And within a day, we had 1,500 five-star reviews and a whole army of people who were going to war who actually love and support this community and the people who hold the thin blue line. And that is what's happening in America that people don't see. I don't care where you stand on Trump. You love him, you hate him, doesn't matter to me. The one thing that he did nail, he talked about the silent majority, right? And again, this has nothing to do with politics. The silent majority are the people who are in this room who love law enforcement, who stand behind those who serve and protect. And the media doesn't want to show you those faces. Social media doesn't want to show you those faces. But those are the people who are quietly supporting them, who are dropping off little gift baskets for them, who are watching out for them, who are sharing those positive stories of law enforcement. Well, we need the silent majority to stop being so damn silent, because when all the media is covering is the hate and this anti-law enforcement rhetoric, how are we going to fight back if we're going to continue to sit here and be silent? We all need to start standing up, put on our big boy and big girl pants, and start being public about our support for those who serve and protect. So I mentioned the Whiskey Wall series. It was shortly after that I was doing a segment on Fox and Friends about law enforcement. And Robert calls up, or he shoots a message through Facebook after, and he says, hey, listen, if you ever need any stats or data or information or anything like that in support of law enforcement, I can help you out. Hit me up. So my team vets him out, and I have a conversation with him. I said, brother, what's your reach like? He goes, how the hell should I know? I said, I thought you run this platform. He said, yeah, but I'm a cop. I don't know anything about this. So we went into the back end, took a look, and at that point he was reaching over 20 million people a month. I called him up. I said, bro, you hit 20 million people a month. He's like, oh, I do? I said, yeah, you do. He's like, is that any good? I said, yeah, that's good. And so it was shortly after that we partnered up, and the first really big project that Robert and I did together, we went out to Chicago to the National Conference for Concerns of Police Survivors. We sat there for 3 days interviewing survivors. We had Susan Moody. Susan, at the point that I was interviewing her, I had a 1 and a 3-year-old daughter. And I was interviewing Susan, and Susan told me about the day that she had to tell her 1 and 3-year-old daughters that their father was never coming home because their father was killed in the line of duty. And Susan broke down crying, and I broke down crying, and we held each other, and we cried together, and we prayed together. And it was in that moment that I took an organization that I cared about, that I respected, and I fell in love with that organization because I saw this was a group that was truly making a difference in people's lives. And I'm not going to drone on for too much longer, but I do want to share one story. And I feel like it's okay to talk a little bit about God because this is Texas and no one's going to pull me off stage. So I was at National Police Week down in DC, and I got off a plane, and within about half an hour, I was sitting down with a family. Now, going into these conferences, I know what to expect, right? Like people are in their darkest moments. They've lost the people that matter most to them. And so I try and put up that wall. I try and get mentally prepared for it. But with all the insanity of DC and airports and everything, I sort of forgot to put up that wall. And I sat down, and the first person I interviewed was a little 6-year-old girl. And that 6-year-old girl told me that she just wanted to tell her uncle one more time that she loved him. And then I interviewed that 6-year-old girl's mom, and she told me how she just wanted to tell her brother one more time that she loved him. And then I interviewed that fallen officer's mother, and she was a strong, courageous woman. And then I interviewed Marlon. Marlon was his dad. And Marlon's a big guy, and Marlon was clearly not doing so well. He had been so strong for his family, and coming out to National Police Week was just sort of that punch to the gut, and all the emotions caught up with him. I said, Marlon, you're not doing so hot. He said, I'm not. He goes, but I got to tell you, Kyle, this was the hand of God. I said, and we're doing this whole thing on camera. I said, brother, I respect that, and I hear you, and I'm a believer too, but you got to sort of walk me through this. Help people to understand. Now, guys, keep in mind, this man is in his darkest moments, right? He said, well, Kyle, we hadn't seen my son in about 8 years. We had no family problems, but we also had no family money. He lived hours away from us. He lived actually about 8 hours away. And he said, we talked all the time on the phone, but we hadn't seen each other in years. And I was sitting there one night, and I felt something bite my leg. And I looked down, and I got bit by a brown recluse spider. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no, don't feel bad for me. That was God. I said, yeah, dude, you gotta walk me through this. He goes, well, you ever hear one of these spider bites before? I said, I heard they're bad. He goes, yeah, no, they're not bad. I was gonna lose my leg. It's like a flesh-eating bacteria that chews you up. I said, and we're good with this. He goes, yeah, we're good with this because it was God. I said, how was this God, brother? He said, because there was one hospital that was able to take care of me, and it was 15 minutes away from where my son lived. The day before his son was killed in the line of duty, he and his wife got to spend the entire day in the hospital with their son, having not seen him in person for 8 years. I said, brother, that was God. He said, that was God. I truly believe that there's a big man upstairs looking out for all of us. And I also believe that he puts many of us in the right places, at the right times, for the right reasons, whether or not we know it. Your contributions tonight at this event are helping to change lives. But your money isn't enough. It's appreciated, guys. It is truly appreciated, but it's not enough. We need your voices. We need your hearts. We need your prayers. That's all. I just want to leave you guys with an old Irish blessing. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warmly upon your face and the dew fall gently upon your heels. And until we meet again, may the Lord keep each and every one of you in the palm of his hand. Thank you all for your time. God bless you all, and God bless America.